The chamber was larger than any building on Earth. It stretched upward into darkness, ringed by thousands of floating platforms, where creatures from across the galaxy sat in judgment. Some had scales. Some had wings. Some existed as clouds of gas held together by magnetic fields. All of them were watching the single human who stood alone at the center of the floor. Admiral David Kane had faced death many times. He had commanded ships through asteroid fields and solar storms. He had given orders that sent good men and women to their graves. But nothing in his 53 years of life had prepared him for this moment. Out above him, arranged in circles that seemed to go on forever, sat the representatives of 412 species. The Galactic Council, the oldest governing body in known space. They had been making laws and deciding the fate of civilizations since before humans learned to use fire. And today, they had gathered to decide what to do about humanity. High Arbiter Nexos floated at the center of the highest platform. His body was made of crystal that shifted through colors no human eye could properly see. When he spoke, his voice seemed to come from everywhere at once. David Kane of Earth, you stand before this assembly accused of crimes against galactic peace. You violated sovereign territory. You destroyed vessels belonging to a protected member state. You killed 18,000 sentient beings. How do you answer these charges? Kane looked up at the Arbiter. His heart was pounding, but his voice did not shake. I answer that I did what any human would do. I answered a call for help. A wave of sound moved through the chamber. It might have been laughter. It might have been anger. Kane could not tell. From one of the lower platforms, a serpent-like creature rose to speak. Its scales were black as void, and its eyes burned with cold fire. This was Lord Vextus, representative of the Dominion, the most powerful military force in the galaxy. The human admits his crime, Vextus said. He does not deny that he led 49 warships into Dominion space. He does not deny that he attacked our harvest fleet without provocation. He does not deny that he murdered our people. I deny the word murder, Kane replied. Your people fired first. They were defending their legal right to collect property. Property. Kane let the word hang in the air. You call 4 billion living beings property. The Valuxi signed the Protection Compact 300 years ago. They agreed to provide biological resources in exchange for our defense. Their debt came due. What we were doing on their world was legal under galactic law. Kane turned slowly, looking up at the assembled species. Hundreds of eyes and sensors and other organs of perception were fixed upon him. Most showed hostility. Some showed curiosity. A few, perhaps, showed something like hope. I want to make sure everyone in this chamber understands what we are discussing, Kane said. 3 days ago, Earth received a signal. It was weak. It was primitive. It used frequencies that most of you probably forgot existed. But the message was clear. He touched a control on his wrist, and a holographic recording filled the center of the chamber. A voice spoke, translated into the common tongue. Please, anyone who can hear this. They have come for us. They are taking our children. We have no weapons. We cannot fight. Please, help us. The recording ended. The chamber was silent. That is the voice of a Valuxi mother, Kane said. She sent that message while Dominion soldiers were breaking down her door. She sent it knowing that no one would probably hear it. She sent it because hope was all she had left. Lord Vextus made a sound of disgust. Emotional manipulation. The Valuxi knew what they signed. Their ancestors made a bargain, and we held up our end. We protected them from the swarm. We kept them safe for 3 centuries. The price was always clear. The price was their lives. The price was service. How that service is rendered is not their concern. Kane shook his head slowly. Where I come from, We have a word for what you describe. We call it slavery. And we have another word for what you are doing on that planet. We call it genocide. The chamber erupted. Voices shouted in a dozen languages. Platforms shifted as representatives rose to condemn the human or demand his punishment. High Arbiter Nexus had to project a wave of calming energy across the entire space before order was restored. Admiral Kane, Nexus said, you are not here to lecture this council on morality. You are here to answer for your actions. The facts are not in dispute. You led a fleet into Dominion territory. You destroyed 47 vessels. You killed their crews. These are acts of war. Yes, Kane agreed. They are. The simple admission seemed to catch everyone off guard. Lord Vextus leaned forward, his forked tongue tasting the air. You admit to acts of war against the Dominion? I admit to defending innocent people against those who would slaughter them. If that is an act of war, then yes. Humanity is at war with the Dominion. The silence that followed was absolute. No one moved. No one spoke. Even the floating platforms seemed to hang frozen in space. High Arbiter Nexus finally broke the stillness. Admiral Kane, do you understand what you are saying? The Dominion commands the largest military force in the galaxy. Earth has been a spacefaring civilization for less than 100 years. You cannot win such a war. Kane smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. With respect, High Arbiter, you do not know what humans can do. 3 days ago, 49 of our ships faced 47 Dominion vessels. We lost 21 ships and over 4,000 people. But the Dominion lost everything. Every ship, every soldier, every single being who came to that planet to harvest living people like crops. He pointed up at Lord Vextus. Your commanders thought we would surrender when they fired on us. They thought we would run when they targeted our escape routes. They thought we would break when they started killing our people. He paused. They were wrong. Lord Vextus rose to his full height, which was considerable. You speak of one battle, one moment of surprise. The Dominion has 1,000 fleets. We have conquered species far older and more powerful than yours. What happened at Veloxy Prime was a mistake. It will not happen again. You are right about one thing, Kane said. It was a mistake. Your mistake. You sent a harvest fleet to murder 4 billion people, and you did not expect anyone to stop you. You have done this so many times to so many species that you forgot something important. And what is that? Kane looked directly into those burning eyes. You forgot that the universe is not empty. You forgot that somewhere out there might be someone crazy enough to fight back. Someone stupid enough to believe that the right thing to do is also the possible thing to do. He spread his arms wide, taking in the entire chamber. Humanity has not come to your galaxy to ask permission. We have not come to trade or to make alliances or to join your councils. We came because someone asked for help. And where we come from, that is all the reason we need. In the observation gallery, high above the chamber floor, Ambassador Elena Cross watched with her team of diplomats and military advisors. They had prepared for this moment for weeks, ever since Kane's fleet had returned from Veloxy Prime with news of what they had done. They had expected anger. They had expected threats. They had expected the Dominion to demand Earth's surrender. What they had not expected was the look on Lord Vextus's face. It was not rage. It was not contempt. It was fear. For the first time in perhaps 1,000 years, the Dominion had encountered something they did not understand. A species that did not calculate odds before acting. A species that would cross the stars to save strangers. A species that considered dying for a cause to be a reasonable price. Elena turned to her aide, a young officer named Thomas. Signal the Prometheus. Tell Admiral Kane that Phase 1 is complete. Thomas nodded and began transmitting. Below, Kane was still speaking, still challenging the assembled powers of the galaxy. But the real work was happening elsewhere. In the corridors outside the chamber, in private meetings on orbital platforms, in encrypted messages sent to species who had spent centuries living under the dominions. Shadow. Humanity had not come to Nexus Prime to defend itself. Humanity had come to start a revolution. And the Galactic Council had no idea what was about to happen. Ambassador. Elena Cross had not slept in 47 hours. The tribunal had recessed after Admiral Kane's declaration, and since then she had been working without pause. Her quarters on Nexus Prime were modest by galactic standards, a small suite of rooms in a station that housed millions. But right now, these rooms were the center of the most dangerous diplomatic operation in human history. The Dominion has requested a private audience, her aide Thomas reported, reading from a datapad. They want to discuss terms. Elena shook her head. They want to threaten us without witnesses. Decline. The Arbiter's office is asking for clarification on Admiral Kane's statement. They want to know if Earth officially declares war on the Dominion. Tell them we are still reviewing our position. Thomas hesitated. Ambassador, if we do not clarify, they may assume the worst. Elena looked up from the documents she had been studying. Her eyes were tired, but her mind was sharp. Good. Let them assume. Fear is the only language the Dominion understands. A chime sounded at the door. Thomas checked the security display and frowned. Unknown visitor. The system cannot identify the species. Elena stood. Open it. The door slid aside to reveal a figure unlike anything Elena had seen before. It appeared to be made of light, a humanoid shape composed of shifting patterns that hurt to look at directly. The air around it seemed to vibrate with energy. Ambassador Cross, the figure said. Its voice was musical, like wind chimes in a storm. I am called Memoria. I am of the Eternal Ones. May I enter? Elena had heard of the Eternal Ones. Everyone had. They were the oldest species in the known galaxy, beings of pure energy who had existed since before most stars were born. They rarely involved themselves in the affairs of younger races. They certainly did not make house calls. Please, Elena said, stepping aside. Memoria floated into the room. Thomas reached for his sidearm, but Elena waved him down. I am not here to harm you, Memoria said. I am here to help you understand what you have done. Elena gestured to a chair, then realized the absurdity of the offer. What do you mean? You have awakened something, Ambassador. Something that has been sleeping for a very long time. The galaxy is about to change, and you need to know why. The light being moved to the center of the room and projected an image from its own body. Stars appeared, then planets, then ships. A history of the galaxy unfolded before them. 12,000 years ago, there was another species like yours. They called themselves the Builders. They came from a world much like Earth, a high-gravity planet with a violent ecosystem. They evolved as predators, as warriors, as survivors. And like you, they could not look away from suffering. The image showed the Builders spreading across the stars. They were humanoid, though larger than humans, with 4 arms and skin like stone. They built ships and stations and colonies. They made contact with other species and formed alliances. The Builders believed that the strong should protect the weak. They answered distress calls without asking who sent them. They fought against slavers and conquerors and those who preyed upon the helpless. For a time, they were heroes. The image changed. Now it showed the Builders at war, their fleets engaging enemies across 1,000 fronts. But the powers of that era feared them. The Dominion's ancestors were among those powers. They could not defeat the Builders in open battle, so they used other methods. They isolated them. turned their allies against them, spread stories that painted them as dangerous fanatics who threatened the stability of the galaxy. Elena watched as the builder civilization slowly crumbled. Trade routes closed. Colonies were abandoned. One by one, their allies withdrew. In the end, the builders did not fall in battle. They fell because they were alone. The galaxy had decided that peace was more important than justice, that stability was more important than freedom. The builders were erased from history. Their worlds were taken. Their people were scattered. Within 3 generations, they were forgotten. Memoria let the image fade. The Dominion was created to ensure that no species, like the builders, would ever rise again. The protection compacts are not about defense. They are about control. Species that sign them become dependent on the Dominion. They lose their ability to fight, to resist, to even imagine fighting. Within a few centuries, they forget that they ever had the choice. Elena felt cold. The Voluxi. Yes, and 317 other species currently under Dominion protection. All of them are scheduled for processing. Some within decades. Some within centuries. The Dominion is patient. They have learned that the surest way to consume a species is to first make them believe they cannot survive without you. Thomas spoke up, his voice tight with anger. Why are you telling us this? Why now? Memoria turned to face him. Because you have done something the builders never managed. You have survived your first battle. You have come to Nexus Prime, not as prisoners, but as participants. And you have the attention of every species in the galaxy. The light being moved closer to Elena. The builders failed because they fought alone. They trusted that others would join them once they saw what was right. They were wrong. The galaxy does not reward the righteous. It rewards the strong. Elena met the being's gaze, or what served as its gaze. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that you have one chance. One moment when the fear you have created is greater than the fear of the Dominion. You must use that moment to build something the builders never had. An alliance, not of the willing, but of the desperate. Not of the brave, but of those who have no other choice. Memoria produced a small crystal and placed it in Elena's hand. This contains records that have been hidden for millennia. Proof that the Dominion has altered their compacts with dozens of species. Proof that they have systematically engineered the dependency of their clients. Proof that what happened to the builders was not an accident, but a plan. Elena looked at the crystal. It was warm in her hand, pulsing with stored information. Why are you helping us? She asked. The Eternal Ones have never intervened before. We have not intervened because there was nothing to intervene for. The builders are gone. The species they tried to save are enslaved or extinct. The galaxy has been at peace for 12,000 years, and in that time it has rotted from the inside out. Memoria's light flickered. We are tired of watching. We are tired of remembering. If humanity can succeed where the builders failed, we want to see it. The being began to fade. You have 72 hours before the tribunal reconvenes. The Dominion is already mobilizing. They will not make the same mistake twice. Whatever you are going to do it quickly. And then Memoria was gone, leaving only the faint scent of ozone and a crystal that contained the secrets of an empire. Elena turned to Thomas. Get me Admiral Kane and contact everyone on our list. Every species we identified as potential allies. Every representative who showed even a hint of sympathy during the tribunal. What are you going to tell them? Elena looked at the crystal in her hand. The weight of 12,000 years of history pressed down on her shoulders. But beneath that weight, she felt something else. Something that humans had carried with them since they first looked up at the stars. Hope. I am going to tell them the truth, she said. I am going to tell them that they have a choice. They can keep living under the Dominion's shadow, waiting for the day when they are taken. Or they can stand with us. Thomas frowned. And if they do not stand with us? Alina walked to the window and looked out at the vast expanse of Nexus Prime. Millions of beings from hundreds of species, all living their lives under rules they had never questioned. All waiting for someone to show them that another way was possible. Then we stand alone, she said. Like the builders. And maybe we fall like them too. But at least we will have tried. She turned back to her aide. 72 hours, Thomas. Let us make them count. In the depths of Nexus Prime's commercial district, Admiral Kane was having a very different conversation. He sat in a private booth in a bar that catered to species who preferred to do business away from official channels. Across from him was a creature made of glass and light, a Kathrani ambassador he had seen at the tribunal. You want to know if we would help, Kane said. I already told you. Yes. The Kathrani's form shimmered. You do not understand. The Kathrani signed our compact 400 years ago. We have 50 cycles before our processing begins. 50 cycles to find a way out. Then help us now, and you will never be processed at all. The ambassador made a sound that might have been a laugh. You are so certain. How? How can you be certain of anything against the Dominion? Kane leaned forward. Because I have seen what humans can do when they believe in something. I have seen us fight wars we should have lost and win them through sheer stubbornness. I have seen us survive plagues and famines and disasters that should have wiped us out. We are not the strongest species in the galaxy. We are not the smartest. But we are very, very hard to kill. He stood up and placed his hand on the ambassador's shoulder, feeling the strange warmth of living crystal. Join us, he said, and find out what it feels like to be hard to kill too. The tribunal chamber was packed when proceedings resumed. Word had spread across Nexus Prime that something historic was happening, and every species with a representative on the station had sent observers. The floating platforms were crowded 3 deep. Beings who normally avoided each other sat side by side, united by curiosity and fear. High Arbiter Nexus called for order, his crystalline form pulsing with authority. This tribunal will now hear testimony regarding the incident at Veluxe Prime. The Dominion has requested the right to present witnesses. Lord Vextus rose from his platform, his black scales gleaming under the chamber lights. I call Captain Roth of the Harvest Fleet victorious. A holographic projector activated, and the image of a Dominion officer appeared at the center of the chamber. He was badly burned, his scales cracked and weeping fluid. He had clearly survived the battle at great cost. Captain Roth, Vextus said, tell this assembly what you witnessed. The captain's voice was rough with pain. We arrived at Veluxe Prime to begin the scheduled collection. Everything was proceeding normally. The Veluxe were cooperating. There was no resistance. And then, the human fleet appeared without warning. They came out of faster-than-light transit at point-blank range inside our defensive perimeter. Before we could raise shields, they opened fire. The chamber stirred. Such tactics were considered suicide by every civilized species. The risk of collision alone made close-range transit unthinkable. Describe the battle, Vextus commanded. Roth's image flickered. It was not a battle. It was butchery. The humans did not fight like any species I have encountered. They rammed our ships. They launched boarding parties into vessels that were still firing. They detonated their own damaged craft inside our formations. His voice cracked. I watched a human cruiser, crippled and burning, accelerate directly into our flagship's engine core. The crew was still alive when they hit. Silence fell across the chamber. Even species who had no love for the Dominion were disturbed by what they heard. They are not warriors, Roth continued. They are predators. Apex predators from a death world where evolution rewarded only the most brutal. They have no concept of surrender, no concept of acceptable losses. They will spend their own lives like currency to destroy their enemies. Admiral Kane listened from his position on the floor. His face showed nothing, but inside he felt a strange mix of pride and sorrow. The crew of the UES Valiant had known what they were doing when they made their final run. They had known, and they had done it anyway. Vextus turned to address the assembly. You have heard the testimony. The humans are not a civilization. They are a plague. They emerged from their quarantined world and immediately committed mass murder. If we do not stop them now, while they are still weak, they will spread across the galaxy like a disease. Ambassador Elena Cross rose from her position in the observation gallery. High Arbiter, I request permission to cross-examine the witness. Nexos considered. The ambassador may proceed. Elena walked to the center of the chamber, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. She looked up at the holographic image of Captain Roth. Captain, you said the Valuxi were cooperating with the collection. Can you describe what that cooperation looked like? Roth hesitated. They presented themselves at designated collection points. And what happened at these collection points? They were processed according to standard procedures. Elena touched her wrist control, and a new holographic display appeared beside Roth's image. It showed footage captured by Earth's rescue teams in the aftermath of the battle. Is this what you call processing? The footage showed Dominion collection teams forcing Valuxi families into transport containers. Children were torn from their parents' arms. Those who resisted were struck with pain inducers. The containers were stacked like cargo in the holds of processing ships. They were complying with the compact, Roth said. They knew the terms, did they? Elena produced the crystal memoria had given her. High Arbiter, I submit into evidence documentation proving that the protection compact signed by the Valuxi 300 years ago has been altered 17 times without their knowledge or consent. The chamber erupted. Vextus shouted objections. Representatives from dozens of species demanded to know if their compacts had been similarly changed. Nexos had to project another calming wave before order was restored. These records are forgeries, Vextus declared. The Dominion does not alter its agreements. Then you will have no objection to an independent audit, Elena replied. Let the Council examine every compact the Dominion has ever signed. Let them compare the original documents to what is currently enforced. If you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. Vextus's scales rippled through colors that suggested fury. This is a distraction. We are here to judge humanity's crimes, not to investigate the Dominion's internal affairs. The two are connected, Lord Vextus. Humanity answered a distress call from the species that was being harvested against their will. If the compact was violated by the Dominion, and our intervention was not a crime, it was a rescue. The compact was not violated. The Valuxi owed us their service. The Valuxi owed you protection in exchange for resources. They did not owe you their children. Elena turned to face the assembly. I have reviewed the original compact that the Valuxi signed. It specified annual tributes of agricultural products and mineral resources. Nothing more. The Dominion added the biological collection clause 80 years later, during a regime change on Valuxi Prime, when the new government was too weak to resist. She pointed at Vextus. You did not conquer the Valuxi. You did not defeat them in war. You slowly, quietly, rewrote the rules until their lives belonged to you. And you have done the same thing to hundreds of other species. The Kathrani ambassador rose from her platform. Ambassador Cross speaks the truth. The Kathrani have examined our own records. Our compact has been altered 9 times since it was signed. Another voice joined in. This one came from a massive being that resembled a living mountain. The Thorax Compact was changed to include labor conscription 50 years after signing. Then another, and another. Species after species revealed that their agreements with the Dominion were not what they had originally signed. The chamber became a chorus of anger and betrayal. Lord Vextus watched his carefully constructed empire begin to crack. For 3,000 years, the Dominion had maintained control through the appearance of legitimacy. They were not conquerors. They were protectors. Their clients served them willingly. That lie had just died. "Enough," Vextus roared. His voice cut through the noise like a blade. "You want to know the truth? Here is the truth. The Dominion is the only thing standing between this galaxy and chaos. We maintain order. We prevent wars. We keep the peace." He swept his arm across the chamber. "Do you think the Thorax could defend themselves against the swarm? Do you think the Kethrani could survive without our fleets protecting their borders? You have lived in safety for millennia because we were willing to do what was necessary." "What was necessary?" Admiral Kane spoke up. "You mean eating people?" "I mean making hard choices. Something your species clearly struggles with, given how quickly you rush into situations you do not understand." Kane walked to the center of the floor, standing directly below Vextus's platform. "You are right. Humans do struggle with hard choices. We struggle with them all the time. We debate them. We argue about them. We write books and make speeches and fight wars over what is right and what is wrong." He looked up at the Serpentine Lord. "But there are some things we do not struggle with at all. When someone asks for help, we help them. When someone is being hurt, we stop it. When someone tells us that cruelty is necessary for peace, we call them a liar." Kane turned to address the entire assembly. "The Dominion wants you to believe that you have no choice, that you must accept their protection or face destruction, that the price they demand is just the cost of survival." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Humanity is here to tell you that there is another option. You can stand with us. You can reject the Dominion's compacts and their lies and their harvests. You can be free." Vextus laughed. "Free? Free to do what? Die when the swarm returns? Starve when trade routes collapse? You offer them nothing but pretty words and certain destruction." "I offer them something you never did," Kane replied. "I offer them respect. I offer them the right to choose their own fate. And I offer them humanity's promise. If you stand with us, we will stand with you. We will answer your calls. We will fight your enemies. We will die for you if we have to." The chamber was silent. Every being present understood the weight of what was being offered. It was not just an alliance. It was a revolution. High Arbiter Nexus spoke carefully. "Admiral Kane, you speak of standing against the Dominion. But the Dominion commands the most powerful military in the galaxy. Earth cannot match their strength." Kane smiled. "Not yet. But we are learning fast." Before anyone could respond, alarms began blaring across Nexus Prime. Emergency displays activated throughout the chamber, showing sensor data from the system's outer reaches. A fleet had just arrived. 50 Dominion warships bristling with weapons, their targeting systems already painting the human vessels in orbit. Lord Vextus's voice was cold with satisfaction. "You wanted to see Dominion strength, Admiral? Look well. This is what awaits any species foolish enough to stand with you." Kane did not flinch. Instead, he touched his communicator and spoke a single word. "Now." On the edge of the Nexus Prime system, space began to ripple. More ships emerged from faster-than-light transit. Human ships. Not the 49 vessels of the original response fleet, but hundreds of them. Carriers and cruisers and destroyers. Every combat-capable ship that Earth possessed. And they were not alone. Behind the human fleet came other vessels. Kethrani light cruiser. thorax dreadnoughts. Ships from a dozen species who had answered humanity's call dot in the tribunal chamber. Elena Cross watched Lord Vextus's face shift from triumph to disbelief. The Serpentine Lord had been so certain of his power, so confident that no one would dare oppose him. He had forgotten that certainty is not the same as truth. Admiral Kane looked up at the assembled species one final time. You have a choice to make. Stand with the Dominion and their lies, or stand with us and fight for something better. He walked toward the chamber doors, his footsteps echoing in the stunned silence. Either way, humanity is not going anywhere. Two fleets hung in the void, separated by less than 10,000 kilometers. On one side, the Dominion Retribution Force, 50 warships commanded by Lord Vextus himself. On the other, the combined human alliance, 300 vessels crewed by beings from 15 different species. Neither side had fired. Neither side had backed down. For 6 hours, they had waited. Weapons charged, targeting systems locked, knowing that one wrong move would start the largest battle in galactic history. On the bridge of the UES Prometheus, Admiral Kane studied the tactical display. His fleet was larger, but the Dominion ships were more powerful. In a straight fight, the outcome would be uncertain. Thousands would die on both sides. Sir, Commander Lisa Patel reported from her station, the Dominion flagship is hailing us. Lord Vextus wants to speak with you directly. Kane nodded. Put him through. The main view screen flickered, and Vextus's serpentine face appeared. His scales were pale with anger, his eyes burning with a cold fire that had witnessed the deaths of civilizations. Admiral Kane, you have made a grave error. The Dominion does not negotiate with terrorists. Then why are you calling? Vextus's tongue flicked out, tasting the recycled air of his own bridge. I am giving you one final chance to surrender. Withdraw your fleet. Disarm your vessels. Submit yourself to the judgment of the Council. Do this, and we may show mercy to your species. Kane leaned back in his chair. And if we refuse? Then I will destroy every ship in your fleet. I will follow the survivors back to Earth, and I will turn your homeworld into ash. Vextus paused. You think you have won something today. You think you have built an alliance that can stand against us. You are wrong. The Dominion has ruled this galaxy for 3,000 years. We have crushed rebellions larger than yours. We have broken species more powerful than yours. You are nothing but a temporary inconvenience. Kane considered his response. Behind him, his crew worked at their stations, preparing for a battle that might begin at any moment. They were scared. He could see it in their faces. But they were also determined. Lord Vextus, I want to tell you a story. The Serpentine Lord hissed with irritation. I have no interest in human fables. Humor me. It is short. Kane stood and walked toward the view screen. About 300 years ago, my species was divided. One group of humans believed they had the right to own other humans, to buy and sell them like property, to force them to work until they died. Sound familiar? Vextus said nothing. Another group believed this was wrong. They fought a war over it. The war lasted 4 years and killed more than 500,000 people. But in the end, the slavers lost. And my ancestors wrote something into law that has guided us ever since. All humans are created equal. All humans have the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Kane pointed at Vextus. You think we are naive. You think we do not understand how the galaxy works. But we understand perfectly. We just refuse to accept it. We refuse to believe that some beings have the right to own others. We refuse to believe that peace built on slavery is worth preserving. He spread his arms. So here is my answer to your ultimatum. No, We will not surrender. We will not disarm. We will not submit. If you want to destroy us, you are welcome to try. But know this, you will lose ships. You will lose soldiers. You will lose so much that even if you win today, you will never be as strong as you were yesterday. Vextus stared at him for a long moment. You are insane. Probably. But we are also here. And we are not leaving. The transmission ended. Kane turned to face his crew. They were looking at him with expressions ranging from terror to awe. Battle stations, he said quietly. Prepare for engagement. In the tribunal chamber on Nexus Prime, Ambassador Elena Cross was facing her own battle. The council had devolved into chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Platforms shifted and collided as species tried to distance themselves from potential targets. High Arbiter Nexos attempted to restore order. This tribunal is still in session. All parties must remain calm. Calm? The Thorax representative, a mountain of living stone named Granite, spoke with a voice like grinding boulders. There is a Dominion fleet outside ready to murder us, and you ask for calm? The Dominion has no quarrel with neutral parties. Vextus's voice came through the chamber speakers. He was still on his flagship, but monitoring the proceedings. Only those who have chosen to side with the humans need fear our response. Elena stepped forward. And there it is. The Dominion's true nature revealed. Obey or die. Submit or be destroyed. This is the peace you have accepted for 3,000 years. It is better than war, someone called out. Is it? Elena pulled up a holographic display showing the list of species currently under Dominion protection compacts. The Valuxi are gone, processed into biological components. The Kathrani are scheduled for harvesting in 50 cycles. The Thorax in 200. One by one, the Dominion will consume every species that signed their agreements. She turned slowly, meeting the eyes of representatives throughout the chamber. And what will happen when they run out of client species? When there is no one left to harvest? Do you think they will simply stop? Or do you think they will come for the rest of you? The Kathrani ambassador spoke up. Ambassador Cross is correct. I have seen the records she provided. The Dominion has been planning the systematic consumption of dozens of species for centuries. They are patient. They will wait until you are weak, until you have forgotten how to fight, until you depend on them completely. And then they will come for you. More voices joined in. The chamber was splitting, species choosing sides based on fear and calculation, and, in a few cases, genuine conviction. Then a new voice cut through the noise. It was small and quiet, but something about it commanded attention. May I speak? Everyone turned. At the entrance to the chamber stood a group of beings that no one had seen before. They were amphibian, with smooth blue skin and large dark eyes. They moved slowly, carefully, as if the gravity of Nexus Prime was heavier than they were used to. They were Valuxi. The leader of the group walked to the center of the chamber. She was old, her skin wrinkled with age, her eyes clouded, but still sharp. When she spoke, her voice carried across the vast space. My name is Mira. I am the last elected leader of the Valuxi people. I was in hiding when the humans came. I watched the battle from a shelter beneath my city. She looked up at the assembled species. For 300 years, my people lived under the compact. We were told it was for our protection. We were told we owed a debt. We believed them because we had no reason not to. Myra's voice hardened. Then they came for our children. They came with ships and soldiers and containers designed to hold living beings. They came to harvest us like crops. She pointed at the empty platform where Vextus's hologram had been. The Dominion calls this legal. They call this order. They call this peace. Her voice rose. I call it murder. I call it slavery. I call it everything that decent beings should fight against. Myra turned to face Elena. Ambassador Cross, the Veluxi have nothing left to give. Our world is in ruins. Our population has been halved. We have no ships, no weapons, no resources. She reached out and took Elena's hand. But we have our voices, and we add them to yours. Whatever comes next, the Veluxi stand with humanity. The chamber was silent. Then, slowly, the Kathrani ambassador stepped forward and stood beside Mira. The thorax followed. Then others. Species after species, moving to stand with the humans. High Arbiter Nexos watched with something that might have been wonder. In 3,000 years, he had never seen anything like this. The Dominion's power had seemed absolute, unquestionable. Now it was crumbling dot on the bridge of the Prometheus. Admiral Kane received a message from Elena. The coalition had grown. 42 species had officially declared their support. 200 more were considering it, but the Dominion fleet was still out there. And Lord Vextus was unning out of patience. Admiral, Commander Patel reported, the Dominion ships are moving. They are forming attack formation. Kane looked at the tactical display. The enemy fleet was arranging itself for a devastating first strike. In minutes, the shooting would begin. All ships, defensive positions. Protect the civilian vessels. The human fleet shifted, placing itself between the Dominion and the evacuation craft that were carrying delegates away from Nexus Prime. If the battle started, thousands of innocent beings would be caught in the crossfire. Sir, Patel said, we are receiving a transmission. It is not from the Dominion. Kane frowned. Source? Unknown. A signal is coming from ... everywhere. The view screen flickered. A figure appeared, made of light and energy, and something that human eyes could not quite process. Kane recognized it from Elena's reports. MEMORIA, the Eternal One. People of the galaxy. Memoria's voice resonated through every ship, every station, every communication device in the system. You stand at a crossroads. For 12,000 years, the Dominion has ruled through fear and deception. Today, that rule is challenged. The light being's forms seem to expand, filling the view screen. I have watched civilizations rise and fall. I have seen the builders destroyed for daring to believe in justice. I have seen countless species surrender their freedom for the illusion of security. But I have never seen this. A young species, barely a century old, standing against the greatest power in the galaxy. Not for conquest, not for profit, but because someone asked for help. Memoria's voice softened. The Dominion believes they have won already. They believe that fear will always triumph over hope. They believe that you will choose slavery over the risk of freedom. Prove them wrong. The transmission ended. In the silence that followed, something changed. It was not visible on sensors or tactical displays. It was something deeper, something that passed through the hearts of every being who had heard those words. On a Kathrani light cruiser, the captain ordered her weapons armed. On a thorax dreadnought, the crew began charging their engines. Across the coalition fleet, species who had spent centuries learning to fear began to remember what it felt like to hope. Admiral Kane watched the coalition ships moving into formation beside his own. They were not running. They were not surrendering. They were choosing to fight. He opened a channel to the entire fleet. All ships. On my mark, we engage. The battle never came. For 6 more hours, the two fleets faced each other across the void. Weapons remained locked. Targeting solutions stayed active. Every pilot, every gunner, every commander waited for the order that would start the killing, but the order never came. Lord Vextus stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Dominion's pride, watching the tactical display with growing frustration. His fleet was powerful enough to destroy the human alliance, but the cost would be catastrophic. Half his ships, perhaps more. And even then, victory was not certain. The humans had proven at Veluxy Prime that they were willing to die. More than willing. They seemed to embrace death as a tactical option, spending their lives to damage enemies they could not otherwise defeat. Fighting such a species was not warfare. It was mutual destruction. And the Dominion could not afford mutual destruction. Not now. Not when 42 species had openly defied them. Not when hundreds more were watching, waiting to see what would happen. "My lord," his tactical officer reported, "we are receiving transmissions from the Council. High Arbiter Nexos is requesting a ceasefire." Vextus hissed with contempt. "The Arbiter has no authority over Dominion military operations." "Yes, my lord. But the transmission is not just from the Arbiter. It is signed by 374 species. They are calling for an end to hostilities and the beginning of formal negotiations." 374. That was nearly every species in the known galaxy. Even the Dominion's allies were among the signatories. Vextus understood what that meant. The Dominion had not lost a battle. They had lost something far more important. They had lost the narrative. For 3,000 years, they had maintained power through the belief that they were necessary, inevitable, unstoppable. That belief had just died. "Contact the human flagship," Vextus ordered. "Tell them we agreed to the ceasefire." On the Prometheus, Admiral Kane received the message with cautious relief. The standoff was over. The shooting would not start today. But he knew this was not the end. It was barely the beginning. "Sir," Commander Patel said, "Ambassador Cross is requesting your presence at the council chambers. The negotiations are about to begin." Kane nodded. "Tell her I am on my way." The negotiations lasted 3 weeks. They were not easy. The Dominion fought every concession, challenged every command, used every diplomatic trick accumulated over millennia of power. They stalled. They threatened. They walked out of sessions and refused to return for days. But they could not walk away entirely. The coalition that humanity had built was growing stronger every day. Species that had been too afraid to join were now scrambling to add their names. Trade routes were being reorganized to exclude Dominion-controlled space. Military alliances were forming along new lines. The galaxy was changing, and the Dominion could either change with it or be left behind. Ambassador Elena Cross led the human delegation. She was tireless, working 20-hour days, meeting with dozens of species, addressing concerns and fears and hopes that she barely understood. She made mistakes. She offended allies and gave ground to enemies. But she never stopped pushing toward the goal. The goal was simple: a new compact. Not the Dominion's protection compact, built on lies and eventual enslavement. A genuine agreement between equals, guaranteeing basic rights to all sentient beings. The right to self-determination. The right to refuse exploitation. The right to ask for help and receive it. They called it the Covenant of Sovereign Species. The Dominion hated it. Lord Vextus argued against every clause, every word, every implication. He warned that the Covenant would lead to chaos, to war, to the collapse of galactic civilization. He predicted that species who rejected Dominion protection would be destroyed by external threats or internal conflicts. Elena listened to his arguments with patience. Then she asked a simple question. If the Dominion's protection is so valuable, why do you need to force people to accept it? Vextus had no answer. In the end, the Covenant was signed by 218 species. The Dominion refused to sign, but they agreed to recognize its existence and refrain from attacking member states. It was not peace. It was an armed truce, maintained by the threat of the coalition's combined military power, but it was enough. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Dominion's domination was not absolute. There was an alternative. There was hope. The ceremony took place in the Grand Tribunal chamber where, 4 weeks earlier, Admiral Kane had stood alone against the judgment of the galaxy. Now the chamber was decorated with banners from every coalition species. Representatives who had condemned humanity were now applauding as the covenant was formally ratified. High Arbiter Nexos presided over the ceremony. His crystalline form glowed with colors that human translators rendered as profound emotion. Today marks the beginning of a new era, Nexos declared. For millennia, this galaxy has been governed by power. Those who had it ruled. Those who lacked it served. This was accepted as the natural order. He turned to face the human delegation. Then came Earth, a species so young they had not learned that the natural order was supposed to be unchangeable. They received a cry for help and answered it, not because it was safe or wise or profitable, but because it was right. The humans showed us something we had forgotten. The strong do not have to prey upon the weak. Power does not have to mean domination. There is another way. Elena Cross stepped forward to speak on behalf of humanity. She looked out at the assembled species, at creatures of crystal and stone and gas and light, at beings so different from humans that communication itself was an act of translation. "We did not come to your stars to rule," she said. "We came because the universe is vast and lonely, and we hoped to find that we were not alone. We found more than we expected. We found civilizations that had achieved wonders we can barely imagine. We found species that had solved problems we have struggled with for centuries." She paused. "We also found cruelty. We found suffering. We found people who had given up hope because they believed that no one would help them. Humanity cannot fix everything that is wrong with this galaxy. We are too young, too weak, too ignorant. But we can promise one thing. We will never stop trying. We will never accept that cruelty is inevitable. We will never look away from someone who asks for help." Elena raised her hand in a gesture of welcome. "To every species that has signed the covenant, we say thank you for trusting us. To every species that has not yet signed, we say the door is open. And to the Dominion, we say this: we are not your enemies. We do not seek your destruction, but we will oppose you whenever you try to harm those who cannot defend themselves." She lowered her hand. "This is who we are. This is what it means to be human." The chamber erupted in applause. It came from species that had no hands. Expressed through chemical signals and electromagnetic pulses and movements of light. But it was applause nonetheless. Recognition. Acceptance. Hope. Admiral Kane watched from the observation gallery. Beside him stood Mira, the Valungsi leader who had added her voice to the coalition at its darkest moment. "It is strange," Myra said. 4 weeks ago, my people were dying. Now we are part of something larger than we ever imagined." Kane nodded. "That is how it works. You help someone, and they help someone else. Eventually, you have more friends than enemies. Is that a human philosophy?" Kane smiled. "It is a hope. We have not always lived up to it. We have made terrible mistakes, hurt each other in ways that still cause pain. But we keep trying." Myra was quiet for a moment. "The Dominion will not give up. They will work to undermine the covenant. They will look for weaknesses to exploit. Yes, this is not the end. It is not even the beginning of the end." Kane looked down at the chamber, at the celebration of species learning to trust each other. But it might be the end of the beginning. 6 months later, Admiral Kane stood on the surface of Veluxi Prime. The world was still scarred from the Dominion's attempted harvest, but it was healing. Reconstruction crews from a dozen species were rebuilding cities. Medical teams were treating survivors. Schools were opening again, filled with children who would grow up free. Commander Patel stood beside him, looking out at the ocean. It stretched to the horizon. "Sir, Earth Command is asking when you will return. They want to discuss your next assignment." Kane considered. He had been offered promotions, commands, honors of every kind. Humanity's hero, they called him. The man who started the revolution. He did not feel like a hero. He felt like someone who had stumbled into something larger than himself and somehow managed not to fall. "Tell them I need more time," he said. "There is still work to do here." Patel nodded and walked away to send the message. Kane watched the waves crash against the shore. Somewhere out in the galaxy, other distress calls were being sent. Other species were suffering under tyrants who believed they had the right to rule. Other children were being taken from their parents. The coalition was growing. The covenant was spreading. But there was so much more to do. So many more calls to answer. He thought about the crew of the Valiant, who had died to save people they had never met. He thought about Elena Cross, working herself to exhaustion to build something that might not last. He thought about Myra and the Veluxi, who had lost everything and still chosen to fight. Humanity had not come to the stars to find peace. They had come to find purpose. And they had found it in the most unexpected place. In the cries of strangers asking for help. Kane turned away from the ocean and walked toward the reconstruction site. There was work to do, lives to save, a galaxy to change. And somewhere in the depths of space, another distress call was being sent. Humanity would answer. They always would.